South African democracy has become commodified. It is now a very expensive commodity. Now you see the impact of those with money, their capital or resources, financial resources flowing into political parties. These finances or these monies flow with their own terms and conditions and interest into these political parties. Greetings to the viewers of TBP Podcast Network. Today we are going to zoom more on decommodification of South Africa's democracy. I am Tshepo. Welcome. It is now clear that since 1994, 30 years later, South Africa has achieved what we can call political freedom. Not much of transformation of the society as a whole, including the economy, including giving back the land to the people, or reversing the land dispossession which happened over many years. And we can say conservatively, the democratic dispensation has to a certain extent failed to deliver a meaningful redistribution of the wealth of South Africa to the majority. This makes the struggle towards a better life for all seems to be more of a pipe dream, because now we know that you can vote, you can be told that you have a right to speak or freedom of expression. You can have all these rights written in a constitution. But if you don't afford, if you don't have the buying power, those rights seems to be more of a pipe dream. Now, let's look at South Africa's democracy. South Africa's democracy is one of our major victories as black people. We were not allowed to vote for many years, since the beginning of the Union of South Africa in 1910, even before the formation of the Union of South Africa. And then many years later, until 1994, where people were all allowed to vote for their own choice. Now, in this country, we have this political freedom encapsulated or captured in Section 19 of the South African Constitution, which simply says every citizen is free to make political choices, which includes the right to form a political party, to participate in the activities of or recruit members for a political party, and to campaign for a political party or a cause. Every citizen has a right to free, fair, and regular elections for any legislative body established in terms of the Constitution. Every adult citizen has the right to vote in elections for any legislative body established in terms of the Constitution. Now, let's have this picture where we can say, indeed, everyone has a right to all these rights as enshrined in section 19. And then, but if every citizen has a right, meaning we as citizens must have means to exercise that right. We know that in South Africa, as a democratic country, for you to be able to effect the policies that will govern the society, you have to be elected. The Constitution says citizens have a right to elect and be elected and to hold office. But let's check this right closely. We have our focus is on this word called commodification. Is South African democracy being commodified? Now, commodity is when you transform the goods, the services, the ideas, and people into commodities or objects of trade. Commodification is when you transform goods, services, ideas, and people into commodities or objects of trade. Now, democracy is an idea. Now, if you turn democracy into a commodity of trade, meaning you will put value on it, you will then say, this is how much it takes to have democracy. And if something such as democracy as an idea is commodified, it clearly says it is not for everyone. It's not for every citizen. And it defeats the intention of Section 19 when it says every citizen have a right to make or is free to make political choices. One of those choices is to form a political party. Now, let's check this commodification. Commodification puts value on anything, including ideas. Now, South African democracy tells us that all South Africans as a whole, as citizens, have a right to make or are free to make political choices. Now let's zoom into this argument that says, up to so far, South African democracy, it is fast becoming a commodity for those who can afford to participate in it. This right that is enshrined in the Constitution in Section 19 in South Africa is implemented through the IEC, the Independent Electoral Commission of South Africa. And the IEC is using relevant legislations to cost the implementation of this important right. And Section 19 is the cornerstone of South Africa's democracy, which is supposedly is a free exercise for all its citizens. Now, let's check. I zoomed in the website of the IEC. I met this paragraph that says the Chief Electoral Officer of the Electoral Commission invites the public to submit comments in respect of the amount of deposit to be paid by registered parties intending to contest an election, as prescribed in Regulation 3, as follows. 1. The amount to be deposited in terms of Section 27, subsection 2 of the Act. Number 2, 200,000 rand in respect of an election of the National Assembly. And B, 45,000 rand in respect of an election of a provincial legislature. There we see a cost attached to a democratic process. Section 19 tells us that every citizen is free to make political choices. The first one is to form a political party. But if this exercise is not subsidized or is not being open for everyone, for every citizen to participate in, that is forming a political party, meaning you have to have 200,000 plus to register to contest for elections at national level. And then at provincial level, you have to have 45,000 plus to register at the provincial legislature. And let's look at how much does it take or it cost for IEC to stage an election. Their cost as IEC, just besides the registrations by political parties, by interested independent candidates. According to National Treasury, the IEC is allocated 2.302 billion for the 2024-2025 financial year. 2.302 billion for the 2024-2025 financial year. Now, we see that staging elections, it cost 2.302 billion. 2.302 billion, it's a hefty bill to stage democracy. It tells us that democracy is a very expensive exercise in terms of the resources needed to deliver it. And Section 19 of the Constitution says every citizen has a right to participate in it. Meaning IEC is implementing the demands of the Constitution. Now, roughly we can say the money that is paid by those with money who wants to participate in the democratic process, political parties, individual candidates, plus the 2.302 billion that is coming from the fiscus. It's a lot of money. And on top of this money is that money that is being donated to different political parties, whereby they are required to declare according to the law. Now, let's look at this argument that says, indeed, South African democracy has become commodified. It is now a very expensive commodity that not everybody can participate in. The following aspects are the elements that gives us a picture that South African democracy is actually now a commodity. High cost of opening or starting a formidable political party. That is the establishment of a political party infrastructure to contest at all levels, and high cost of registering a political party with the IEC, which we have already highlighted there. For province, it's 45,000 plus. For national, it's 200,000 plus. An expensive intra-party democracy. Let's zoom into this one. For parties to comply with the necessary requirements as per South African democracy, they must also have their internal democracy, intra-party democracy. An inter-party democracy requires that all members must have a right to elect and be elected into office. Therefore, we have these gatherings at branch level where there are BGMs, and for BGM to gather, for a branch general meeting to gather, members must come together. resources must be put together for that meeting only. And then after those meetings, you elect your own delegates to a regional a gathering, a conference, elective conference, where even policies will be further discussed. And then at the regional level, there has to be a conference that brings those delegates together, and it's a cost on its own to buzz them in, to give them accommodation, to have the conferencing costs for 2-3 days, for food, and many other amenities around the conference. It's a cost. And then you move from the regional level to the province. To organize a provincial conference, it's a hefty cost on its own to accommodate delegates from the branches. And then in this province, we have 403 branches or wards across the province, in the Northwest Province. Now, taking this 403, sometimes it's 2 delegates per branch, meaning it's 800 plus delegates. And then you have additional delegates from different fraternal organizations. I'm using the example of the African National Congress. Now, then the cost that comes with the provincial conference, administration of the conference, the accommodations of delegates, the food, the regalia, and the facilitation of each and every program or agenda item in the conference program. Now, it's another cost. And then we're building towards a national conference. It also has its own costs, hefty costs. Now, we do all these things because there's a clause or two in the constitutions of the political parties that demands that there should be an internal democracy or intra-party democracy for that party to be able to participate in the broader South African democracy. Now, all in all, the intra-party democracy, it's a cost on its own. It's very costly to run a intra-party political conferences. The other part is political funding dynamics in South Africa, where there's what we call democracy fund from the IEC that goes to the political parties who are represented in parliament to assist with the running of political parties or to subsidize political parties to run their own affairs. But other parties complain that this disbursement is not done equally. Then the high cost of contesting the elections in South Africa, election campaign funds, election campaign cost, registration at the IEC for province, for local, for national assemblies. Now, all these costs runs to billions of rents. Now, we can now say, at the same time, now the the cost of running for election, parties go out to attract donations. And in this process of requiring or requesting those with money to donate to support political parties, you then realize that there's a dynamic that emerges. You have parties that came to the picture during the 2024 national and provincial elections, who just mushroomed few months before elections, a year before elections. Some had millions of donations, millions and millions of donations, but they haven't proved to themselves. They are new in the platform, but they managed to garner millions. Now it creates now a dynamic that the one that pays the piper determines the tune. The one that buys a guitar and plays it determines the tune while others are dancing. Now you see the impact of those with money, their capital or resources, financial resources flowing into political parties, millions flowing into political parties, and these finances or these monies flow with their own terms and conditions and interest into these political parties. You hear statements such as, we can't work with the EFF, we can't work with this one, we can't work with this one. You hear political parties says, no, the economy must be left for the private sector. The government must get out of the economy. Or the government must move out of participating in the economy and leave it to the private sector. The others say the opposite of that. Now, you then see into their manifestos that these manifestos are influenced by those with money, those who manage to put in resources into these political parties. Now you look at that 2.302 billion that has been allocated to the IEC, the monies that comes from the political parties and the independent candidates flowing to the IEC, and the donations from the private capital, from the private people, the donor funding flowing into political parties. Now, all these monies, they come from those with deep pockets. Now, you don't see the poor there, and the majority who are the poor in this country putting together the money to contribute or to contribute their portion in that picture. Only those with money does so because their money helps them to have influence in the directions of the political parties and subsequently the direction of government and maintenance of the status quo, meaning the richer becoming richer and the poorer becoming poorer. and the disparities in this country becoming wider, inequality becoming wider because of this influence of money and resources into the South African democracy. Now, it is without a doubt that democracy, with those aspects that has been raised, the money flowing from the fiscus into IEC 2.302 billion, the monies from the political parties and independent candidates, the donations from those with money donating to different political parties according to their interests. I assume that private capital, or those who are participating mainly in the economy, wouldn't support a party that says, let's collapse the economy. They will support the party that says, let the economy flourish and let the economy be the best in the world. South African economy must benefit those who participate in it, and taxes must be cut for the rich, and then all those benefits that comes with the political process in parliament, lawmaking process. Now, we see that money plays a critical role, a very influential role in the democracy of South Africa, meaning it has become a commodity that can only be afforded by a few. And the cost of SA democracy is forever increasing to the detriment of the majority. One can make that observation that the only time we see the poor making their voices heard is when they engage in violent strikes, in violent protests. And they feel that burning property, burning things is the only language that can be heard by those who are in control of South African democracy. Now, it will be very important that as a society whereby we are experiencing the growth of unemployment, poverty, and inequality, we must pause and ask ourselves that, did the democracy we envisaged or envisaged by the Constitution was meant to isolate those with empty pockets? Was this democracy, when it says every citizen has a right to make free political decisions or participate freely in the democratic process of this country, it just meant that they must just go and vote? But when they vote, you realize that the number of those who vote, the voter turnout, it's shrinking. The voter turnout, it's shrinking. And even those who go to vote, they end up voting being disgruntled with the system, with the democracy itself. Because people now feel that they vote and they wait for nothing, and come the next cycle of voting, they are told to come and exercise their political right, and they vote again, and they go sit at home, wait and wait and wait and wait for a better life that is experienced by the minority. Now, the growth of unemployment, poverty, and inequality, it makes South African democracy very expensive for the majority of the population. And our constitution, it tries or intends to guarantee all citizens that they will be able to have or exercise their right. They will be able to enjoy the benefits of democracy, which are purported to be prosperity for all, equality for all of you being equal before the law, meaning having access to justice. But the reality points the other direction, to the opposite, that the democratic process in South Africa, or the democracy of South Africa, it has been turned into a commodity. It has been transformed into a commodity or an object of trade. That you pay, you then participate. You can only participate when you pay. Now those with money surely are now reaping the benefits of them being able to pay to participate in a democratic process in South Africa. Now, what needs to be done? We must decommodify the South African democracy before it loses its legitimacy in the eyes of the majority. And these are the few suggestions that I would make. Young people should empower themselves with knowledge about the current system, meaning they must know their rights, they must understand the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, and they must make sure that where it needs to be amended, they push for its amendment so that it can meet the needs of the South African people. And they should also, the people of South Africa or the citizens of South Africa, they should at least start to advocate for the removing of money from the implementation of Section 19 of South African Constitution. Forming a political party should be free. Registering it at IEC should be free. Independent candidates, anyone in South Africa who wants to contest for elections, be it local government elections, provincial elections, or national elections, it should be free. to contest. Money should not be one of those terms and conditions. We can put other terms and conditions that a person must fulfill certain criteria. Now, we must at least be able to say you must meet the following criteria for you to qualify, but those must not include money. And lastly, citizens must advocate for the IEC to be adequately funded so that it can make sure that it is found in every locality, in every community, pushing for citizens' education. People must be educated about the system of this country. People must be made aware what is happening and how they can participate, how can they meaningfully contribute to making sure that the system works better for them. The word every citizen must be every citizen. Therefore, we should eliminate the element of money for every citizen to be able to participate. Thank you for watching today. Make sure that you support us by subscribing, following, sharing, liking, making sure that you assist us to connect the dots for our people. Le kamoso.